everybody, and happy Friday. And we are going to have a busy day today. We're going to talk mainly about the wild card weekend for the NFL. I only got 15 minutes, so I'm probably only going to break down two matchups today. And those two matchups are going to be tomorrow's matchups. First off with the Oakland Raiders going to Houston to play the Texans. Then I'll wrap it up with the Detroit Lions going to Seattle. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The one, I guess, not only because they're my team, but one of the best teams in football throughout the whole season, the Oakland Raiders at 12-4, are in the wild card weekend because of some unfortunate events. They lost starting quarterback Derek Carr a few weeks ago to the Indianapolis Colts to a broken leg. And because of that, they are in the wild card weekend because they have scored 6 total points without Derek Carr in the whole fourth quarter of that Colts game, and then the entire Broncos game in Week 17. He scored a total of 6 points on a touchdown, so, I mean, at least it wasn't 2 field goals. But the probably right now playing like one of the worst 12-4 teams I've ever seen, and that sucks to say because this is my favorite team. And I honestly wouldn't want to play anybody at the moment because of our quarterback situation. In that game against Denver, we also lost our backup quarterback, Matt McGloin, who was making a start, to a shoulder injury. And he is going to be basically the backup for this playoff. And rookie quarterback out of Michigan State, Connor Cook, will make his first NFL start. And it will be in the playoffs against one of the better defenses in the league, the Houston Texans. And that's kind of scary for me to think about because, I mean, if you really think about it, Connor Cook, who got to play majority of that game against Denver after McGloin went out, he didn't do terrible. I mean, realistically, he didn't do awful. He threw for 150 yards, 1 touchdown, one interception on, 14 of 21 passing. So his completion percentage is there, 66%. You'd like that to be a little higher, but, 66% in your first game isn't bad. And he did lose 2 fumbles, so that'll be the biggest thing for Connor Cook to hang on to that football, especially with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney, coming off of both ends, and just how complicated this defense could be for Houston. So, and also for Oakland, who defense is not their strong suit, isn't getting any stronger. Safety Nate Allen has been ruled out, as well as offensive players. Wide receiver Andre Holmes and tackle Donald Penn have all been ruled out for tomorrow's game. So Oakland will be not only limping, they will be crawling now, especially with Connor Cook leading the way. The only good thing that I can think about is the fact that they can go under center again. You bring that 6th lineman that they liked to do most of the early part of the season before Derek Carr broke his pinky. So that could be beneficial, and they're going to really have to rely on Latavius Murray, DeAndre Washington, and Jalen Richard. And leading the way is Latavius Murray, 788 yards, 12 touchdowns, and he's going to need a huge day. But the only problem is Houston knows he's going to have a huge day, so they're most likely going to load the box and force Connor Cook to beat you. So look for hopefully Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree to have decent days. Amari had 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns in the regular season. Michael Crabtree 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. So hopefully they can get involved in this offense. They might have to be a little creative, especially with rookie quarterback Connor Cook. And now let's go to the other side of the ball real quick to the Houston Texans, who will be playing at home. And Tom Savage is ruled out. He had a concussion, and I don't believe is cleared protocol yet. So, and, their coaches straight up just said, Brock Osweiler is going to be our guy in this playoff. So that is what will happen. Brock Osweiler, who ended up getting benched towards the end of the season, is now renamed the starter, and he gets to go into a playoff game. And he threw for nearly 3,000 yards, 2,900 yards, 15 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. So he is very prone to not throwing the ball accurately, especially with those 16 interceptions. He had a 59% completion percentage this season. So Oakland needs to capitalize on those mistakes. David Amerson will need to lock down DeAndre Hopkins, which is not an easy task. Also, Oakland not particularly good against the run, and Lamar Miller has had himself a pretty good year. Over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. And like I mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins, who is one of the best young receivers in the league, 954 yards receiving with 4 touchdowns. So this game could be two things. It could absolutely be a shootout in the high scoring, which I don't believe so because both teams have horrendous offenses, especially now that Derek Carr is out. Or it's going to be similar to the Cardinals-Seahawks game where it was 9-6 in overtime or 6-6 and they tied. Obviously that can't happen, so we will get creative. But as much as I want to pull for Oakland, I haven't seen enough of Connor Cook in this offense without Derek Carr to really be optimistic about it. The only thing that I can really see is when you break it down, points and yards and stuff like that, which I will in here just a quick second. Oakland is going to need to have a big day. Connor Cook will need to play like the Michigan State Connor Cook that had a really good Big Ten career against this complex Texans defense. So, like I mentioned, these stats are also very skewed, especially on the Oakland end, because Derek Carr was their quarterback for 15 and a half games. So, points per game, Houston, this just goes to show how bad their offense is, average 17.4 points a game. That is horrendous. You're not going to win very many games. The only reason they won as many as they did is because of their defense. So, I mean, you really got to take that into consideration. You go 9-7 with 17 points scored. Points allowed, Houston 20.5 points a game, so that kind of goes in their favor for the Raiders. 314 yards a game and a 37% success rate on third downs. So Oakland could have its hands full, but their defensive side of the ball hasn't been as sharp as it has been in years past. So Oakland could capitalize. And for Oakland, like I said, very skewed. 26 points per game on the season, but they've only scored 6 points in the game and a half without Derek Carr. So that kind of goes to show you just kind of exactly what happened. And 24 points allowed. They gave up 24 to Denver alone, and I believe they gave up 2 or 3 touchdowns to Indianapolis the week before after Derek Carr got hurt. So that point differential is not very good. The yards per game, 373, again, very skewed. They have not been able to move the ball at all without Derek Carr, and 38% success rate on third down. I don't see it happening. But just because it's a 1.5 or it's a 4-point spread, Houston is favored being in Houston. These two teams have faced before this season in Mexico City with Derek Carr, and it was very one-sided. But you know what? Just because they are my team, yes, I'm going to pull for the Raiders here. I think they win 9-7 on some crazy plays. Sebastian Janikowski will make a game-winning field goal down 7-6 as time expires, and I think it goes 9-7. And Oakland will move on to the next round and most likely face Kansas City, who they've lost to twice, or even possibly go to New England and get ran over. So it's 9-7 Raiders over the Texans in this first game. And now let's go into the second game, which will be at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 Eastern. The Detroit Lions will head to the Pacific Northwest and face the Seattle Seahawks. And this game I don't think will be very close whatsoever. Right now the spread is listed at 8 points for Seattle. I think Seattle smokes Detroit. Detroit is not a very good defensive team, even though Seattle's offensive line is absolutely horrendous. But now that you have a healthy Russell Wilson, you've been able to see that week to week, you can definitely tell that Russell Wilson is much more comfortable back there. And Thomas Rawls hopefully is healthy, because he is a freak of an athlete who can do some damage with this soft secondary and second linebacker unit for the Lions. Russell Wilson threw for 4,200 yards, 21 TDs, 11 interceptions. Russell Wilson's been Mr. Consistency his whole career. This is pretty stereotypical. 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns. Doesn't turn the ball over very often. So I expect more of the same. It's in Seattle, which is one of the hardest places to play in the NFL. I think the only team that compares is Kansas City and Arrowhead, the two loudest stadiums in the NFL. Seattle 7-1 at home. So I don't see this game being very close. And Doug Baldwin is going to carry some slack, especially with Jermaine Kearse getting hurt last couple weeks ago. I think it was on Christmas Day with that leg injury. I think it was Kearse. I don't remember. It was either Kearse or Richardson, one of the two second wide receivers. I think it was Kearse. Goes down. So Doug Baldwin, who already had 1,100 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns, will have a huge game. And Jimmy Graham is a huge target. Russell Wilson will need to utilize him, especially this week, to beat Detroit. And on the other side of the ball, Matthew Stafford, the gunslinger, 4,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, not interceptions. That wouldn't be very good. And 10 interceptions. This guy just hucks the ball all over the place. He will really need to rely on the silent count and quick snaps, because the louder this crowd gets in Seattle, it is deafening. They're very famous for those false starts for opposing teams. And Matthew Stafford will need to have a big game. He will need to throw to Golden Tate a bunch, which he already does. Matthew Stafford, like I mentioned, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, which seems to be getting better each year that he's been in the league. Theo Riddick has been their workhorse, you could say, as a running back. 357 yards, 1 touchdown, but he does a lot of different things. Who can spread the floor or spread the field and get himself out open in the space and create a lot of havoc. And Golden Tate, over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. He will need a huge game. The only problem is he's going against Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor, who are probably the two best at each position in the whole league. I can't really think of a better shutdown corner or strong safety in the league. Running back CJ Prosise for the Seahawks has been ruled out, and Tony McDaniel, due to concussion, is not expected to play for the Seahawks. And for Detroit, I'm assuming this is just a show of their injury report. Center Travis Swanson, tackle Riley Reif, linebacker DeAndre Levy, and wide receiver Andre Roberts, all listed as questionable. My guess would be they all play. They just want to give Pete Carroll an extra something to think about, because Pete Carroll is very good at getting his team prepared week in and week out. You don't go 10-5 almost on a yearly basis by accident, especially with those good teams in the NFC West. Now let's go ahead and quickly look into the points, yards, and third down conversion. Seattle averaging 22 points a game. Detroit 21 points a game. Points allowed, Seattle with their best defense, which is what they're known for, 18 points allowed. Detroit 22 points allowed. So negative differential there for the Lions, which could be detrimental to their postseason success. Seattle 357 total yards, and Detroit 338 yards on offense per game. So could be tricky here. A lot of yards, I think. Detroit 42.5% on third down success rate. Seattle 38%. Quickly, I got about 20 seconds left before I got to let you guys go. I think Seattle runs away with it. 31-14. I think Matthew Stafford throws for a couple of touchdowns and a few picks like he usually does on a game-to-game basis. Sherman, Bennett, Chancellor just create havoc, and Seattle able to run this one out at home to advance to the divisional round. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some football, and I'll see you Monday.